Okay, we're definitely keeping it spooky this month because the next book I'm reading is The Daughter of Doctor Moreau, which is a kind of gothic horror from my favourite horror queen Silvia Moreno-Garcia, and I really enjoyed it. It kind of is based on a reimagining of H.G. Wells' classic tale of Dr. Moreau. However, I've never read that, so I'm going based purely off vibes and my loving her previous books as well. The book itself is kind of set in Mexico, I think, and is kind of a historical fiction fantasy, but I would say I'm focused more on the kind of sci-fi and fantasy elements than the historical stuff because I don't have a huge load of knowledge about that. We also get dual perspectives, so we got the daughter herself of Dr. Moreau, and then we get a kind of Englishman who is their, I guess, caretaker of the place they live in. So Carlotta and Montgomery are our 2 point of view perspectives. Carlotta kind of is our kind of naive young girl perspective. There's a lot of curiosity but also naivety about the work that her father is doing and also how the household is kept. Whilst she is really confident in herself at times, she's very sheltered and unaware of what her father is actually doing with his experiments. His true nature isn't quite clear to her. Even at the end, when things are uncovered, she still loves him a lot and really shows this kind of father-daughter bond. But her journey to innocent to a determined young woman at the end is very engaging, and while she questions everything around her by the end, her growth really highlights the story itself. Montgomery, on the other hand, is a really complex character, much older than the main character, and carries the weight of past traumas and secrets. A lot of baggage. This baggage helps him, I guess, make moral decisions throughout the story, which kind of makes him want to be a better man at some times. And he is quite a sympathetic but a very flawed character. There's many issues with him. And then we also have Dr. Moreau, not a point of view character but a really important character throughout the book. He is a very unlikable and deeply flawed character, as with other characters in the book, but he is our central kind of, not antagonist, but maybe just not a protagonist. He has quite obsessive scientific ambitions and doesn't quite stop what he's doing even when he knows he should. And I'd say that Carlotta's relationship with her father really brings a lot of empathy towards him, where you wouldn't get that otherwise, which is really interesting to read. The plot itself is really slow, and when you first start reading it you don't quite understand what it's going to be about, unless I guess you've read the classic tale, which I hadn't. And then it kind of gets into more fast-paced action as you get to the end of the book. I really enjoyed this kind of big setup of the world, of the characters. It's not just Carlotta and her father in Montgomery who live there. There's a lot of people who work on the land, and there's a couple of characters who act as like siblings to Carlotta whilst not being full siblings itself. The story really takes its time. We kind of uncover secrets as we go along, especially from Carlotta's point of view, as she kind of uncovers more about this world that she lives in, away from her father's kind of sheltering. It really kind of opens up and asks a lot of questions about why this is happening. The writing, as all of Silvia Moreno-Garcia's work, is really atmospheric. The house itself is a character in its own right, similar to her other works, and she really spends a lot of time working on building up the world building, showing us what the house is like, what the lands are like, and what the characters think about each other. There's really a slow burn mystery that kind of keeps you gripped to the book and wanting to find out what's going to happen to Carlotta. I really enjoyed kind of the, I guess, sci-fi elements that comes with the book. Whilst it is very historical in the writing, there's the experiments that Dr. Moreau is doing, which really brings kind of morality and ambiguity into the story. And the narrative itself actually is very focused on, I guess, the backdrop as well as the mystery itself. So it's not just what's happening in the house, it's what's happening to the wider political landscape of that historical time period, without spoiling anything. And it really kind of shows that there's a lot of different things happening which builds tension, and it kind of drives Carlotta and Montgomery to action by the end of the book. The themes of kind of freedom, ambition and scientific exploration are all kind of joined with kind of the morality of these things. It also touches on the treatment of women. Carlotta, as a daughter, doesn't actually own anything, can't actually do anything, so there's a kind of marriage subplot in the book. And there's also kind of mentions of class struggles, colonialism, and kind of those themes are dropped in as kind of showing empathetic views of our main characters and why you should be sympathetic to all of the characters involved. And whilst it probably won't meet the expectations of hardcore sci-fi fans, I would recommend it to anyone who does love kind of more magical realism or historical fiction with kind of a fantasy or sci-fi twist, as this is a brilliant book. There's also kind of elements of horror. I would say there's kind of body horror and figuring out who you are as a person in there without spoiling anything, and the kind of experiments that happen are really quite creepy, and the tension kind of brings that horror-esque aspect to the story. So yeah, if you love kind of rich atmospheres, character-driven plot lines, and also want to read more retellings, because this is a retelling of the H.G. Wells classic, this would make a really compelling read to your TBR. I would definitely recommend it. I'd recommend all of her books, to be honest, and I found it to be really intriguing throughout the story. I just couldn't put it down. So yeah, if you've read it, let me know what you thought. My only issue I ever had was really the pacing at the start, which was a little bit slow, but after it picked up, it was just such a good read, and I'd love to hear what other people think. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again for the next review.